On a quiet morning in New Jersey, a man pulls into the small parking lot of a diner he has visited for years. The neon sign above the door flickers weakly, its light barely cutting through the early air. He steps out of his car, expecting the usual smell of coffee and pancakes, but the windows are dark, and a paper sign taped to the glass reads, "Closed." Inside, the stools are empty, the counter is silent, and the hum of conversation that once filled the room has vanished. Scenes like this are becoming familiar across the United States. Families who once stopped for an affordable breakfast now find the doors locked. For many, what used to be a $5 plate of eggs and toast has become a memory replaced by a more expensive cup of coffee from a chain down the road. It is not only the food that is disappearing, but the feeling of gathering with neighbors, of meeting friends after a night shift, or starting the weekend together. When diners close, Americans lose more than a meal. They lose a place where community and routine once lived. The question is clear: why are these once beloved symbols of American life vanishing from the landscape? To answer that, we first need to remember why they became so important. The diners of the 1950s were not just restaurants. They were places that defined daily life for millions of Americans. Inside those chrome-covered walls, the neon lights glowed day and night, and the smell of fresh coffee drifted through the air. The counter was lined with stools, and every seat was taken. A businessman in a suit sat beside a mechanic in work clothes, while families filled the booths and students gathered for late-night meals. It was cheap, it was filling, and it was always open. At 2 in the morning or at 7 in the evening, the door was never locked. Here, class and status mattered less. People from every background could sit side by side, share a meal, and be part of the same moment. That is why diners became more than places to eat. They became a stage for American life itself. This is also why they appeared again and again in films and television, from the bright colors of Grease to the late-night talks of Pulp Fiction and the small-town charm of Gilmore Girls. Even outside the United States, when people imagined a simple American meal, it was often a diner table with eggs, toast, and steaming coffee. The diner became a cultural symbol as much as it was a practical stop. But this golden era could not last forever. The very qualities that made diners central to American life would soon be tested by a new kind of competition. Along the expanding highways of the 1960s, a new kind of restaurant began to rise. Its signs were bright, its food was fast, and its promise was simple. A hamburger, fries, and a drink could be ordered, served, and eaten in less time than it took to sit down at a diner booth. For families on the road, for workers on a short break, the appeal was undeniable. Chains like McDonald's, Burger King, and Wendy's spread rapidly, their golden arches and glowing signs becoming landmarks across the country. Soon, another type of competition appeared. National franchises such as Denny's, IHOP, and Waffle House borrowed the spirit of the diner, but packaged it in a uniform, predictable way. No matter which city you were in, the pancakes tasted the same, the coffee poured from the same pot, and the booths looked identical. For many customers, this reliability felt safer than the unknown quality of a local diner. What had once been the strength of diners, their independence and individuality, now became a weakness. As chains grew stronger, the small, family-owned diners began to struggle. And yet, competition was only part of the problem. Even greater challenges were waiting behind the kitchen doors. Inside the kitchen, the struggle became harder to hide. The clatter of plates and the hiss of frying pans never stopped, but behind the noise was a constant question of survival. Each month, the bills grew higher. Eggs that once cost $1 a dozen climbed to more than $3. The pork used for the state's famous breakfast rolls doubled in price. Even coffee, the most basic item on the menu, began to eat away at the profits. At the same time, wages had to rise, and finding staff willing to work long overnight shifts became harder every year. For family owners, the hours were endless. Running a diner was no longer just a business. It was a test of endurance. Old buildings added another weight. Leaky roofs, outdated equipment, and kitchens built almost a century ago demanded repairs that few could afford. Some owners watched the next generation turn away, unwilling to inherit a life of constant work and narrow margins. The diner, once a symbol of opportunity, was turning into a burden many families could not carry. And as these pressures mounted, the question was no longer only about competition outside. It was about whether a diner could survive at all under its own roof. Yet even as many diners closed their doors, a few found ways to survive. Some did it by growing larger than anyone expected. Others did it by refusing to change at all. In East Newark, New Jersey, Tops Diner took the first path. Its owners borrowed millions to expand, tearing down the old building and raising a new one 3 times the size. The result was a space that looked less like a roadside stop and more like a modern food hall. Bright lights filled the vast dining room, music played over the speakers, and menus stretched for pages with dishes from every corner of the world. For younger customers, it was no longer just a place for coffee and eggs. It became a destination, a spot to meet friends, to post photos, and to order everything from pancakes to Latin-style steak. Across the state, another story unfolded. The Summit Diner, with only 40 seats, looked almost the same as it did nearly a century ago. Its narrow counter, its worn stools, and its cash-only register offered little more than simple sandwiches and classic breakfast plates. But that simplicity was the point. For regulars, it felt like stepping back in time, a reminder of what diners once were. Tourists came to see it, locals came to preserve it, and together they kept the doors open. 2 diners, 2 very different choices. One embraced change and expansion, the other held tightly to tradition. Both found a way to endure when so many others did not. And in their survival, they revealed something deeper. The diner was never only about the food. It was about the bond between people and the communities they built inside those walls. Those bonds did not disappear overnight. But as diners across America began to close one by one, something deeper started to fade from daily life. The diners we once knew were never just places to eat. They were spaces where people truly knew one another. A waitress remembered how you liked your coffee. A cook greeted you by name when you walked in. And at the counter, strangers became neighbors over a shared plate of food. Now many of those stools sit empty. The sound of morning chatter has faded, replaced by the quiet hum of passing cars. In towns where a diner once stood at the center, people still drive by the empty lot and remember. It was never only about breakfast. It was about routine, belonging, and the comfort of being seen. The disappearance of diners reflects something larger than a change in taste. It shows how American life itself has shifted. People eat alone more often. They order food from their phones instead of meeting across a counter. The conversations that once began over coffee now happen through screens. In losing the diner, communities lose a part of themselves. The faces that once gathered there are now scattered between schedules, suburbs, and devices. And the warm familiarity of the local booth has been replaced by the anonymity of a digital order. The fading of diners is not just about business. It is about what happens when a country built on connection forgets where those connections once began. The fading of diners tells a story larger than America itself. Because what happened here is happening everywhere. Across the world, small local places are disappearing. In their place rise the same glowing signs, the same menus, the same words printed in every language. From Seoul to London, from Paris to Los Angeles, people now walk into cafes that look identical. The walls are clean, the lighting perfect, the Wi-Fi fast, and yet something is missing. Global brands promise convenience, but they take something in return. They trade away the small imperfections that once made a place feel human. They replace the sound of a familiar voice with a universal playlist. They replace the smell of a local dish with the same polished scent found everywhere else. The diner's decline was an early signal of this change, a warning of what happens when comfort becomes standardized. When everything looks the same, people stop remembering where they are. A meal becomes a transaction, not an experience. A city becomes a copy of another city. And as the world grows more connected, its cultures grow quieter. The stories, the accents, the places that once defined daily life slowly dissolve into sameness. The world does not forget quickly, but it does forget easily. The story of the American diner is not about nostalgia or the fall of one industry. It is about identity. It is a mirror showing how globalization reshapes our daily lives, and how local culture can disappear under its weight. Today, the decline of diners is more than the end of a restaurant tradition. It is a reflection of how local cultures crumble in the shadow of globalization. Even in a world that grows more uniform each day, small lights still remain. In quiet corners of American towns, a few diners are still open. Their chrome signs flicker against the morning light. Inside, coffee cups clink, a grill sizzles, and someone calls another person by name. It feels ordinary, but perhaps that is why it matters. These places are not just serving food. They are keeping something that cannot be replaced. A sense of belonging. A simple reminder that people still need places to slow down and see each other. The diner teaches us something. That what we have lost may not only be pancakes or coffee, but the warmth of daily life once shared with our neighbors. The story of the diner began as a symbol of opportunity, grew into a space of community, and ended as a reflection of change. Yet its spirit remains. Because the idea that connection can be simple, warm, and human still survives wherever people gather. Perhaps someday, when someone steps into a small cafe and hears a familiar voice greet them, they will feel something they can't find on a screen, something real. And in that quiet moment, the spirit of the diner will live again.